Then I start up and I got some artists sitting around not doing anything because the designers haven't created the levels. Well, if I can ramp up easily, I can ramp down easily. And as that starts to happen, the question is the internal studio really still make sense? That's just a thought. So just because you're employed by a company doesn't mean that that's necessarily long-term. Another way of looking at it is, if you're employed by a company and the company is not giving you your full value, why are you working for that company? There is still a business model of being independent. And if being independent means in the end that you're going to do better, why is it that we're all working internally? I mean, I'm still asking for the things that I'm talking about up here, and I'm internal. So how really does that change anything? Just because I'm internal doesn't mean I'm dead. I still have an opinion. I guess that'd be my best answer for that. And again, you have directors that sign on for multi-project deals with studios. It doesn't necessarily mean they lose their right to negotiate. In fact, it's common practice. You want something, you ask for it in Hollywood, whether you've already agreed not to have it or not. I mean, it's all about value, and that's what we don't have right now. We don't have that value. No one respects that value. And if you don't respect your value, and you're willing to sell out, and you're willing to sit down, and you're willing to not stand up, that's your right, that's your choice, but you're going to have to live with the consequences of that. Like I said, I got called by the LA Times to ask me whether or not video games were an art form. My answer, by the way, was, well, let's see, I hire artists from Hollywood studios. I hire musicians who work on soundtracks and also work at Hollywood studios. I hire creative directors that have worked within Hollywood. What they're working on in Hollywood is art. How is it that they lose their artistic talent when they walk in Naughty Dog's door? I don't get that. The bottom line is we've done a really bad job of putting ourselves out there as artists, and part of that is the fact that we're hiding behind a brand. EA is not going to be considered an artist, and that's part of the problem. They're hand in hand. The reason that no one sees us as art is because no one sees us as artists. They don't see the names. They only see a giant body of companies making tons of product. And by the way, not being seen as an artist is very dangerous. I told the LA Times I understand why someone asked that question very clearly. Because if we're not art, we're not protected by a lot of free speech and other things. So we have to be very careful. If we're not seen as art, whoa, that's going to hurt us in the future for a lot of reasons. But it goes hand in hand. If the PR people aren't going out there and our publicists aren't going out there and pushing us as artists, we're not going to be considered art just because of the content we create. Somebody's going to go out there and scream. Most people don't realize Jay Leno doesn't call people and say, would you be on my show? Okay, the dog talent, yes, but not the celebrities. The celebrities have publicists that pitch Jay Leno on having their celebrity get there so that they can pump the movie or whatever else it is they're pumping. So if we're not trying to get out there, if we don't have people pushing us, they won't take us because they've got so many other people pushing content at them, people at them, that they've got a million things to do. They don't have time to go look in this corner of the world when we're not yelling back at them. So we need to yell out at them. We're not going to get on Leno tomorrow, but someday someone will. And it'll take a lot of phone calls before we get there. The question is, when are we going to start?
I think this was an excellent talk, and very excited. I'm very excited that you put this together, and I really hope it's going to be the beginning of a call to arms to make something like this happen. But the one thing I started to wonder about is contrasting Hollywood against something like the toy and game industry. If you look at board games, it is very rare for the designers to have their name end up anywhere except in the most niche markets. In fact, there's nothing more depressing than being in an awards ceremony for toys and board games where the publishers come up and accept the awards.
It happens in our industry too, you're right. But you do know who created Dungeons & Dragons.
It's true.
So they have work to do too, potentially. I don't know enough about how board games are created to say who's doing the value in those companies. And this is a value question. As I said, there are industries where it makes perfect sense for PR and marketing to be the value. I don't know enough about board games to know how they're created. I really don't. And I'm not saying either way. I'm just saying I don't know enough. But if they're an industry like us, they got the same problem, and you're right. That doesn't mean that it can't change. It just means they have the same problem.
I'm Dave Schuyler. I just wanted to publicly say thank you.
You're welcome.
Are you going to post your slides anywhere?
Yes, I'm going to post my slides somewhere. I have to go through it and figure out which pieces of Tara Reid I have the right to post. So long as you don't view that as the value in the slides, I can just strip that out with a, this was Tara Reid in front of the Sony logo, and that I can post. But in all honesty, I don't know how much of this I can do. This slide is posted. So yes, I will. I don't know where. I would imagine that all of the DICE talks are posted. Is that correct, Doug?
We're hoping to have actually webcasts at some point.
Okay. One way or another, I will make sure these slides get out there, but you may not see much of Taro.
Great stuff, Jason. With the gathering of developers and some of the other kind of independent developers that tried to come together and we get this rolling, they didn't succeed. They ended up getting bought by publishers. What has to change to turn the corner?
That's the question, right? I was hoping your question wasn't going to be, it's failed in the past, so can we ever succeed? Because 1,000 failures doesn't mean there can't be a success. I also think the industry is changing now. The industry was very different when gathering and developers started. It was, in a sense, probably before its time. Now that this industry has the ability to get money elsewhere, now that this industry is selling the units it's selling, now that developers are starting to stratify, I think, a little bit more, and there's been more years, we've seen more repetitive, repetitive quality gains and losses in certain groups. I think, I don't know, we got to give it another try. And if we can get together and say, how did that fail, then I think that would be a good thing for all of us. I don't think in the end that it was a failure. I think it was an idea before its time. So yeah, that's something we definitely have to look at. Why didn't it work? Maybe not enough developers. Maybe that's the problem. It's a big difference if two guys walk into the office and say, hey, our two companies aren't going to deal with this. It's another thing, think about this. If every major developer says, we're part of this plan, man, we're all united. It's a very big difference. That's what we need.
I guess my name is Paul Kohler. I'm a senior agent in the industry, and I'm one of the agents that you talked about. And our job, when we do our jobs as an agent, is not only to go negotiate deals, we're there to help you build your company, and we're also there to help you build the things that you want to do. So when Jason says we want to make you know you're high profile for your vision or your company, that's what we do. And we add value. When your agents don't add value, like Jason says, we don't use this, but we're there as an adjunct to help you guys successful. And we're not here to build our companies or our careers. We're here to help you guys be successful.
And I think in the future, it's also probably worth saying that, you ask a developer, how do you make a game? And the answer is you go to a publisher and you get a contract. And I think in the future, there are more opportunities than that. And we have been in the basement. The basements now are pretty nice and they have elevators to get to them, but we have been in the basement for 20 years and we need to get out. We need to say there are other opportunities out there for us, and there are people out there that are dealing with those opportunities and see them come and go continually. Were I not to have had the ability or the idea to get out there and get my name, my face in front of the industry, and I had paid somebody a few % of my net worth to get me out there, it would have been worth it. Maybe I got lucky, and maybe I did it all without help. But if you think you're one of those people that can't do it without help, there's help out there, And a few percent, there's more than a few % of the pie that hasn't been taken. That's my theory. And I think it's high time that we use that talent out there. I do not want to push anybody to do anything specific, and obviously you have to look at your business and what your strengths and what your weaknesses are. But I can tell you this, I don't know any agent that charges you to talk to them. So you might as well have a few meetings.
No, we don't.
So you might as well start.
Carl Schnurr, I'm with Microsoft. One of the things I wonder about when I see people out there that are highly publicized, and Peter Molyneux, yourself, Dave Perry, you mentioned a bunch of people here, is how much time do you spend on that upward and outward effort? Right? How much time are you spending on that versus how much time are you working on games?
The question should be, has my product suffered? And I don't believe that my product suffered. So if I'm spending a lot of time at it, which I don't believe to be the case, by the way, and my product's still good, then I think that that's irrelevant. And if Microsoft wouldn't take Jack 3, then I'm spending too much time. But if Microsoft would love to have Jack 3, my next product, in their library, then I'm not spending enough time. That's my answer to that. And, by the way, my being out there